Our keynote speaker today, Dr. Richard Winn, is a true visionary and a nationally recognized authority in higher education. He recently retired from the Western Association of Schools and Colleges, more commonly known as WASC, the regional accrediting agency serving private and public institutions throughout California, Hawaii, and the Pacific. As WASC's Senior Vice President, Dr. Winn ensured that Commission fulfilled its mission to encourage continuous institutional improvement, assuring its membership and the public at large that accredited institutions are fulfilling their mission to their students and for the public good. Prior to joining WASC, Dr. Winn was the Associate Dean for Curriculum at Western University's College of Osteopathic Medicine. He also held faculty and educational leadership roles at Pacific Union College and a variety of other institutions and college systems. In addition, Dr. Winn has served 3 terms on the Board of Examiners for the prestigious Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award, which recognizes U.S. organizations for performance excellence in the business, healthcare, education, and nonprofit sectors. We had the great fortune of getting to know Dr. Winn during Cal Southern's WASC accreditation process, and I can assure you that his keen insights and singular professionalism have had a profound impact on this university. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure and my honor to introduce today's keynote speaker, Dr. Richard Winn.
It has been an extraordinary pleasure to work with Cal Southern over the past number of years as it has achieved WASC regional accreditation. An important distinction that I really want to underscore: this was no gift on the part of the Commission. It was earned by the diligent, thorough, persistent work of this institution. The students that are before us today are the work product that underscore the value of what you are doing. It is my distinct honor to be here today to address you, and I'm sure you can imagine what a nuisance it is to have this thing flashing in my eyes. So I'm going to follow Dr. Heck's example and take it off. This is your event. This is the culmination of your efforts, graduates. It's interesting to reflect. When I was in high school, we thought it was clever to speak of the 3 great transition moments in a person's life: birth, marriage, and death, as hatched, matched, and detached. To be honest, though, with those events, it wasn't all that important that we participate. On the hatched part of it, you just had to show up. You remember that old joke about the kid is asked, "Where were you born?" He says, "I was born in Philadelphia." And they said, "Well, why?" And he said, "Well, that's where my mother was at the time, and I thought I should be close to her at that point." The other end of it, the detached part of it, we want as little to do with that as we possibly can. And even that middle part, the matched part, where we form these presumably lasting relationships, is usually the product of kind of youthful hormones rather than any diligent effort on our part. But your graduation here today, this is yours. You did it. It is not, of course, for many of you, your first graduation experience. Reflecting back to the days of your high school graduation with all of its dizzy craziness and running at the last minute, for many of you to kind of like running through a gauntlet and coming out the other end unharmed. But you were part of a population where 81% of your age group achieved a high school diploma. And while 81% is a real gift to society, it doesn't really give you a whole lot of bragging rights personally, because you endured, you showed up, and you were part of a larger population. Many of you then went on and achieved a post-high school degree. If you received a bachelor's degree, you became, instead of 81%, part of the 34%. And while that raised your income potential by about 60%, for many, as at least it was for me, it was just the next thing you do, and not necessarily the product of enormous thought and effort. But what I'd like to do today is focus on who you are, taking into account that your average age is somewhere around 40, obviously some more than that and a few less than that. But I think that affords you very particular qualifications, and I want to point those out. Interestingly enough, in the national conversation about higher education, all the buzz seems to center around the 18 to 24-year-old, the ones going straight from high school into college, concerned about ACT test scores and getting into the premium school and waiting for the letters to arrive. And everybody's thinking about that, including the policymakers in Washington. What's interesting to note, though, is that in the entire higher ed sector, that group only comprises about 18% of the population. So you really, numerically, are in the majority, even though you get lost in a lot of the conversation about higher ed. But in addition to the credential that you're about to receive from your administration and staff, I want to focus on some very important qualities that mark you as the adult learner. A good share of my own graduate studies were focused on the discipline of human development. This is that window on the human experience that sees you moving through stages and progressively becoming more sophisticated in your reasoning processes, your ethical values, your moral stances, till over time you become quite a different person. You understand the cosmos differently because you have a different set of skills. And these are highly in evidence as you come to this moment in your life. And just a personal word about why this is of great significance to me. I marched down the aisle to receive my own doctoral degree when I was 59 years old. It's not 80, I realize. But it gave me some time to benefit from that experience in ways that were absolutely beyond what I could have imagined when I started. I was determined to re-enter the world of education after having been involved for some 30 plus years in a career for three very important reasons. And as I mention these, I'm sure you can articulate similar sentiments. Number one, I was determined that I was going to move into the rest of my professional life with a recognized credential that would mean more than my own esteem for myself. It would open the doors, it would give me opportunities that I would not otherwise have. Secondly, I wanted to be exposed to the best thinking, the best scholarship, the latest understandings of the profession, so that should those doors open, I could walk through them without disappointing people or embarrassing myself. And thirdly, at a very personal level, I wanted to make sure that I did not become intellectually slovenly as my own personal life advanced. I wanted to always be stimulated to enter that class of humans who were challenged and who reflected and responded. I'd seen too many people who, once they got the first post-secondary credential, grabbed a can of beer in one hand and a TV clicker in the other and put in the clutch to coast to the finish line. And I said, I'm determined that would not be me. Some of you recall that 1930s humorist and cynic H.L. Mencken. And he once said, "A man of resilient mind outwears his friendships just as certainly as he outwears his love affairs, his politics, and his epistemology." And we can relate, can't we? As we say more casually today, life moves on. But if you were thinking and reasoning today the same way you were when you graduated from high school, you wouldn't be here today. One of my former students used to wear a t-shirt that across the front said, "I may be getting older, but I refuse to grow up." I'm sensing that was not your class motto. That you are here because you are profoundly different people, and in the next few minutes I want to focus on 5 indicators that I strongly suspect characterize who you are today as successful adult learners. Number 1, you keep on learning. According to a Gallup poll that was released just last week, people with graduate degrees are measurably more likely to learn something new every single day than those without the degree. I've seen many schools in my work with WASC that have put in their catalog, we will produce lifelong learners. And I found that in most cases they have no clue what that means. But there's something about who you are now that says that you have a 74% greater likelihood that you will learn something new every day. That part of your DNA seems to kick in at the graduate adult learning level. Not just occasionally, not when somebody nudges you, but as you respond to an enormous innate curiosity, you will keep learning. You'll read new magazines. You grab books off the shelf that you wouldn't have bought at Barnes & Noble 10 years earlier. You'll engage in conversations with people whose intellectual reach and altitude is beyond what many of your peers are doing. And you will be enormously inwardly satisfied as you do that. Each day you will find that your former worldview was too limited, that the questions you were asking were too simple, and that you're going to reach out and embrace a new way of thinking and learning virtually on a daily basis. Secondly, you are finding your own voice. And if you know what I mean by that, then you will have found your own voice. I mean, the unavoidable problem of the young is that we didn't know what we didn't know. The choices we made when we were teenagers, choices about careers and colleges and girlfriends and boyfriends and belief systems, they were so inadequate. Not because we were unwise, but because our repertoire of available options was so narrow. We weren't rebellious, we were just inexperienced. Our cognitive catalog was so skinny. We didn't know what we didn't know, and so we had to rely on other people. And we weren't even smart in choosing which other people to rely on. Accustomed as we were to listening to other people, we didn't really have a voice of our own. Our voices were dim, untested, easily drowned out by the volume of other people telling us what to think, what to do, and how to live. But you are here today because you have found and are finding a voice of your own, a voice that you recognize, a voice that you trust. You're framing an inner self from which your words arise. Your academic work has called upon you continuously to reflect, to think, to become clearer on your own inner values. And your voice is being backed by that inner sense of courage, that source from within you that says, I know who I am and I know where I'm going. For some of you, this has called for you to stand up against some of those voices and to say, I disagree with you. And I need to tell you now, I may not live up to your expectations because I'm becoming clear about my own. Thirdly, you are directing your own careers. The very fact that you've chosen to pursue a degree at Cal Southern means that you've claimed the empowerment to chart a path for yourself. You've opened the door to greater opportunities, to more engaged circle of friends, to more rewarding career paths. It means that you've gained a clearer sense of who you are in linking key decisions about career directions to that sharper picture of what you're capable of accomplishing. A tangential illustration. Sometimes we talk about the difference between honesty and integrity. For just a moment, and let this illustrate something. To be honest is to speak the truth. Typically someone else's truth, or an objective truth about the external world, truth about history, truth about something factual. To have integrity, by comparison, means to act consistently with reference to your own inner self, to your values, to your convictions, to what you have discovered as of true worth. You've internalized it. And to have integrity means that you consistently reference to that internal sense of conviction and truth and value. Your educational experience here at Cal Southern has called upon you continuously to engage in reflection and to clarify and strengthen what you do find to be of value and worth. To the degree that you have settled that, to that same degree, you can be said to have integrity, a great and wonderful gift. A fourth quality that I believe characterizes you is that you are more likely to have emotional intelligence. The demands today for leadership, for making a difference in policy and in your profession, in counseling, in the justice system, all of this calls for an increased demonstration of a quality that is referred to as emotional intelligence. It has to do with the deep inner sensitivities to your own life. It means to be competent in an area that is seldom addressed in a traditional college curriculum. Championed by scholars such as Daniel Goleman, the world is increasingly aware that people can be smart without being wise, that they can be brilliant without being sensitive to the emotional interplay between themselves and others. And only as you know and get honest and real with your own inner life can you respond wisely to how that plays out in the lives of others. It means emphasizing self-management, empathy, self-reflection, the skill to be regularly asking, how am I coming across and being perceived by other people? Recent studies in leadership have demonstrated a very high correlation between emotional competencies and those that requires to become respected leaders. And while the passage of years does not in itself guarantee that you will develop emotional intelligence, the fact that you have made this set of decisions to bring you here today represents a significant commitment to self-development. At this stage of life, it dramatically increases the likelihood that you are also becoming emotionally intelligent. You've brought intelligence to your emotions. You've learned to harness the enormous emotional energies that drive your life and that make you attuned to the energies driving other people's lives. I can remember my dissertation chair often saying, your own level of emotional intelligence becomes the ceiling that limits the entire organization that you lead. To the extent that your own increases, to that extent, the rest of the organization in which you have impact will grow. And I believe he was being prophetic. And the final point, number 5, as your class speaker said, you have claimed mastery over your own soul. As perhaps with some of you, I grew up in a conservative religious family. For whatever its benefits, a risky downside to this type of practice is that it taught me not to trust my own abilities to think and to understand the great realities of life. I was taught to submit my understanding to the about life's great issues to others who wore vestments, who presumed to have privileged access to the divine mind. These authorities could determine for one the dimensions of guilt, of hope, of ultimate truth, and life's meanings. And implicit in this arrangement is the message that you cannot trust your own mind. For myself, in an atmosphere of often seasoned with fear and shame, I was taught enormous amounts of self-judgment, self-doubt, and the need to submit to others. Ideas labeled as sacred were exempt from my evaluation. I remember in college stumbling across the great line from Alexander Pope, who said, "Know then thyself, Presume not God to scan, the proper study of mankind is man. And the words fascinated me, but it was decades before I could finally own them for myself. For you to know that you are capable of understanding and driving the life of your soul is an extremely important component. And the chances are very great that that's who you are. Some of you may recall that 2009 Clint Eastwood movie, Invictus. Starred Matt Damon. Morgan Freeman played the role of Nelson Mandela as Mandela sought to bring South Africa back from the brink of post-apartheid civil war. And while the premise of the movie was about a rugby team that was rallying the nation at a critical time when it needed to be brought together rather than destroy itself, the real thrust of the movie, on which the title was based, was a poem by the English journalist William Henley. Composed in 1857 while Henley was in the hospital fighting tuberculosis, this poem was later memorized by Nelson Mandela, and during his 28 years of imprisonment, Mandela was able to reference this poem repeatedly to help him deal with the enormous cruelty and unfairness and injustice that besieged him all around. The ringing conclusion of this poem sets a beacon for us, a visual that positions us with a firm hand on the helm of our ship, boldly sailing away from the safety of the harbor into the unknown and potentially stormy waters. These are Henley's sentiments, and I want to share them with you. They were written even as tuberculosis was causing him to lose a leg. He writes as follows: "Out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. In the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeonings of chance, my head is bloody but unbowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears looms the horror of the shade, and yet the menace of the years finds and shall find me unafraid. It matters not how strait the gate, how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul." Graduates, may you move forward as masters of your fate, captains of your soul.